All right. Hello and welcome to the Texas Association of Builders Sunbelt Builder Show virtual demonstration. Shortly, you will be hearing from Field Controls. They will walk you through a review of Field Controls' Healthy Home System program, including their advanced UV filtration and ventilation products with the goal in creating an ecosystem of healthy indoor air. Field Controls have saved time at the end of their presentation to answer a few questions. So please type them in the chat and they will be answered at the end. Now, Field Controls, whenever you're ready, I'll stop sharing my screen and you can take it away.
Okay, thanks, Blair. Everyone seeing my screen okay?
That looks perfect.
Awesome. Well, hello, everyone, and thank you to the Texas Association of Builders and Sunbelt for allowing us the opportunity to present today. My name's Tony Zanotti. I'm the National Sales Director at Field Controls, and along with me today is Charles Davidson. He is our Southern Territory Manager based out of Dallas-Fort Worth. So between him, Charles, and myself, we have a pretty good idea of what's happening, not only in the building community, but what's happening directly in the Sun Belt. So we're looking forward to answering your questions. We're only going to take about 30 minutes today. I don't want to give too much information, but what we can do is follow up, hopefully at the show. Our goal today is two parts: to present a general overview of the IAQ demand and trends, as well as address the most pressing issues of why ventilation is growing rapidly due to code enforcement, especially after a post-COVID scenario. So as we get into today, let's see here. A little bit about Field Controls. By chance, is anyone seeing the Zoom feature? I'm gonna make sure I hide that. But a little bit about Field Controls. We've been around since 1927. Our original claim to fame is we created the gas biometric bypass damper, which got written into combustion code up in the Northeast. So we're very well known throughout the Northeast and combustion markets. However, even though we've been around since 1927, we've truly started to focus on air quality in the early 90s. So we have 40 assembly cells between our two locations in Kinston, North Carolina and Corona, California. What's nice about that is we were able to weather a lot of the supply storm, not only based upon our bi-coastal footprint for manufacturing, but as well as leaning on our parent company and our group of companies to the HYCO network, our parent. We manufacture over 750 finished SKUs. We are a woman-owned business and ISO certified. Our portfolio of companies includes the HYCO network, about 3.2 billion in under management of the variety of companies globally, which enables us a very strong supply chain, as well as enhanced capabilities for manufacturing. So I'd like to point this out because while you may have not heard of Field Controls, we are a fast mover in the up and coming space, especially new construction, as well as well known throughout the construction world. Our mission is to provide the highest quality and best performing air treatment and control solutions on the market. We want to place those in every home and business across America. And our purpose is to make sure the air our families breathe indoors is of the highest quality. As getting into the state of the IAQ market, I'll give you an example. I was in a new construction build during the pandemic, mask and all. Everyone's very concerned about not only their personal health, but how we progress as builders and contractors in the trades to assure our homeowners that their air quality is good as well. And I spent about an hour and a half between an attic as well as discussing the homeowner expectations, and was shocked to find out that the homeowner knew just about as much regarding air quality is most of the trades. So the understanding of what IAQ and the awareness is heightened. That the pandemic definitely shed a light on what it is to have a healthy indoor air. And our homeowners are looking to our builders and HVAC pros to answer their questions. So part of what we do as a mission at Field is provide trainings, not only like this, but to the trades, so that they have not only the resources and the training to put in the products correctly, but to handle such questions and do it with excellence. There's several problems, and what I wanted to highlight today especially applies to the builder contractor relationship. There are so many different IAQ products out there, strategies, various levels of code enforcement, that we need to develop a strategy, not only as a manufacturer, but how we relay that strategy to the builder and the subcontractor, which will enable it to be easy. It's been a broad problem for the industry as a whole. And so our goals are outlined on this page. We want our value proposition to be easy to understand, sell, and install, show it with pride in the model home as a value add. It's very difficult to show off what you cannot see. And last time I've been through several new home tours, we're not stopping at the utility closet to say how awesome our mechanical system is. Although in the industry, we like to see a nice buttoned up mechanical closet, or a new higher efficiency SEER rated system. It's typically not that way as it follows through to selling new homes. But if we're able to provide the correct model home environment, including all the resources, we can show IAQ as a value add. And those offerings are: we want to protect the investment of the home. We want to protect the health of our families. We want to increase our comfort by reducing odors, helping our homeowners clean less, while also controlling and balancing temperature and humidity, which is a huge focus of ours in the Southeast and in the Southern climates. In addition to saving based on decreasing energy costs, whether that's by design with ventilation, or keeping the equipment more clean with air cleaning devices. The key here is to provide a standardization, whether you're a track home builder or a custom builder. What we find as a best practice is, especially for our custom builders, if you want air quality, standardize it as a package, because not only is it highly profitable, trying to get your trades to do one thing on one job and then another on another job, it just causes a lot of confusion, where we find the adoption decreases without a standardized program. So Field Controls is trying to provide all the core competencies of air quality and standardization training. That way it trickles down to the adoption and it becomes the industry standard. Buyers are more concerned about technology and connected home than they've ever been before, and they are willing to pay for technology. So adding the connected home with IAQ focus is very helpful. When I'm at trade shows, I often get the question of, well, how do we mitigate? How do we know the equipment is performing? How do we know that if we're putting in UV light, that the bulb's not out? We're progressing as a manufacturer to allow the connected home products to not only function, but also to mitigate. For example, providing a IAQ control that would monitor ventilation throughout the home in multiple ways, and we'll get into that in a minute. But knowing when, beyond just kitchen ventilation or beyond just running a typical code-based ventilation cycle, if the air quality is poor, that's when we want to dilute and bring in fresh air. But we also want to make sure that air is optimal. It's not necessarily too hot or too humid. So having sophisticated controls that can connect and mitigate is the goal of our products and the Healthy Home system. The key for all of our products is to be agnostic. Any mechanical system, any build, and any design. So they're somewhat boilerplate, but also custom, if you know what I'm saying. They're custom to your value proposition, but they can work across any manufacturer. That helps us standardize the system. And then we want them to have zero liability, to reduce maintenance, to provide minimal homeowner interaction or expectations that they are going to need to be adjusted or explained during the warranty period. The warranty period of these new homes should have zero callbacks regarding any of our equipment, including ventilation. So what is a healthy home? Right now, just for the sake of time, today we're going to focus on filtration and ventilation. But there's 4 key competencies to every healthy home. We want to filter the particulates. Typically, that's an induct air cleaner that filters out debris, bacteria, allergens, virus, particulate, and they're rated from a system of MERV between MERV 11 and MERV 16. If you're not familiar with the MERV rating, it's just based upon the higher the MERV, the more we can capture. Then sterilization of that air. You might hear the phrase capture, kill often. Sterilization often will inquire UV, photocatalytic oxidation, as well as some of the other more sophisticated systems that might produce ozone, hydrogen peroxide, etc. None of our products produce ozone or any harmful impact to the environment. Ventilation is to just dilute harmful stale air and provide positive pressure throughout the envelope of the house, and then humidity management to reduce growth and bacteria. The Healthy Home System will focus on clean and fresh today. Just briefly describing these products, what you'll notice on the left is one of our best-selling filters. We sell through 6,000 national suppliers through distribution, and that filter can fit competitive boxes that look very similar to the ones you see on the right. So we have a filter that can, for all intents and purposes, fit every manufacturer, regardless of if it's a Field Controls air cleaner box or not. One thing I will point out is the middle section there provides, the middle air cleaner provides not only a PCO, a UV, and a filter all wrapped into one box. It is the most sophisticated capture, kill, and sterilize air cleaner in one box that's on the market. On the right-hand side is going to be what you're probably most familiar with, allowing just enhanced media filtration with filter only. One question that I get a lot of times when I'm talking about what we call the trio is, if you have a filter in there and UV, doesn't it degrade the filter? We have a sophisticated patented, not only PCO that's a lifetime warranty, but we also have a honeycomb style mesh that does not degrade the filter. Typically, these filters are rated to last anywhere from 6 months to 1 year. In terms of fresh and automatic airflow management, we want the homeowner to not even know ventilation is happening, but to happen when it's optimal. And we'll get into that in a second. So quantifying the opportunity, I took this report from a global industry analyst, because what you'll notice in the bottom left is what they're speaking to standalone versus induct air capturing is primarily a portable that you can buy on Amazon. Heck, we even make a portable, and versus what I just showed you on the prior page being an induct air cleaner. As you know, it's kind of stale in terms of sales are slightly increasing. And I feel that's on us. That's on us as the industry, because primarily when you're speaking to new construction, you have the opportunity to put one of these in every single home. And if we can make up the difference between the red and the blue on the bottom left-hand corner, you'll notice there's demand, because they're going to go out and buy it anyway. So this includes add-on replacement as well, but specific to new construction, every homeowner wants to have a clean home. There's a value there for enhanced filtration. And by 2027, the market will be $3.4 billion. Now that includes replacement filters, but in terms of adding an air cleaner to a home, you're talking about a minimal investment where you're buying a piece of equipment that is anywhere, depending on how sophisticated, between $100 to $500 per home. Typically, you're not seeing the channels from our distributor network or our contractor network accounted for based upon where our consumers are purchasing their air quality products. So there's an immense opportunity for not only the contractor, but for the builder on the front end to install these products so that the contractor can go and service them on the back end and not approach a homeowner about a new product sale when they have to swap out a piece of equipment 20 years later. We'll get into ventilation real quick. This is the core of, I think, the interest in Texas. If I had to sum up why we're ventilating, I can't tell you how many meetings I've been a part of where the question is, Tony, why are we forced to install enhanced ventilation? We've never had to before. And the contractor's perception of ventilation is quite accurate. When done wrong, it creates more issues than it helps. So the current status quo is to avoid ventilation whenever possible. If they don't have to do it, they won't. But if they're taught how to do it right, the benefits far outweigh being lazy. Ventilation adoption is rapidly increasing due to mechanical and energy codes requiring ventilation. This is especially relevant due to the EPA and CDC recommending ventilation to dilute common virus particulates and to eliminate cancer-causing VOCs. It's at this point when I'm talking to the contractor that sometimes our perception switches, and it's beyond what the code agencies are driving for energy consumption, for health, and overall providing a better, more comprehensive environment that's healthier to the homeowner. So why are we ventilating? Building materials are tightening based upon air changes per hour, which increases the CO2 level and traps harmful gases. What we're seeing as a trend in the market, and I'll pull an example out of Metro County, Nashville, is the contractor base was not familiar with how to ventilate per ASHRAE 62.2. Out of nowhere, they ended up providing, out of nowhere, they changed the code for everyone to adopt the most stringent, most modern ASHRAE code. So they had to ventilate for every home, regardless of air changes per hour, which left the contractors scrambling to understand, train their people, select a product and strategy. Who do you turn to at that point in time? And that's where we as field controllers feel we can fill the gap and provide not only the products and services, but the training to do ventilation in the correct manner. We're also ventilating because we want to dilute the VOCs and remove pollutants, better indoor air health, reducing viruses and germs, reducing smells and stale air, makeup air for kitchen ventilation, as well as being able to save energy, because when you tighten up a home and you put it under positive pressure, you're not pulling in air that's untreated from every corner of the home. Where we're ventilating, we're tracking progressively as a company, because there's a variety of methods as well as a variety of climate regions that will dictate your product choice. For example, HRVs are very popular up in the north, not as much in southern warm environments. That might be where we switch to a dehumidifier or provide an enhanced logic for a control, so we only optimize ventilation at peak times where humidity and temperature is optimal. So tracking county by county, we know that Texas is on the forefront of a lot of adoption. You'll typically see a ventilator code as well as providing that control, whether it be a thermostat that initiates the ventilation call or a subsidiary control. What we find to be the most successful in that type of environment is a subsidiary control, because by the time the air reaches the thermostat, for it to balance out in temperature and humidity, it's often too late around a 2,400 square foot home where the bedroom gets a good percentage of that air and the thermostat is placed in a common area. It presents itself to being too late by the time the air in the thermostat is satisfied for ventilation. The other areas of the home have become too humid or too uncomfortable. So as we progress and design our products for field controls, we want to admit some basics. That ventilation gets a bad reputation by the contractors and builders because we see quite a bit of callbacks. And I'll give you an example. I was working with a national contractor and I asked, what's your average callback percentage for a typical home with a ventilator? And they said 40% of the time they go back, And 30% of those calls require 3 additional follow-ups. So if your average community or complex is 300 units, that's 120 callbacks plus an additional 36 calls from there. With field controls, I believe in the simplicity of our setup and products, we get it right the first time, and we can standardize the expectations as much as possible, reducing those callbacks to almost none. Ventilation issues are caused by a variety of factors, including the debate points of where we've been with ventilation to where we're progressing. Ventilation is viewed as an added expense, requires additional design. There's many variables and requires adjustments for follow-up. So the way we solve the problem is selecting the right products for the climate zone, the right strategy and design, and we'll get into some design tips in a minute, but you're going to have 4 basic types of ventilation. Exhaust ventilation is what you see on the right, typical bath fan that is only exhausting air from the home. Passive ventilation, which may be just a open duct that a damper would open whenever the air handler goes on. Typically, those are not good setups because they tend to overventilate the home, especially in more southern climates. That's when you come up with a lot of issues. We've seen water in dryer vents. We've seen any type of kitchen ventilation pulling in microbial growth. So passive is an option for a certain climate zone, but it doesn't fit the southern climate. We have a best option, which is the powered and positive pressure, which would include a powered ventilator and a smart control. Or there are options to do a balanced ventilation approach, whether it might be an ERV, a dehumidifying ventilator, also keeping in control with temperature and humidity. So providing consistency in design, we need to admit that ventilation is not a one-size-fits-all solution, but we can standardize the products and methods based upon the area where code is enforced with best practices, and then train and educate not only our builders, not only our GCs, our contractors, and even the homeowners as well. Our best practices for when to ventilate: we engage ventilation when humidity and temperature is optimal. Our goal is to keep the living space between 40 to 60% relative humidity at all times and easily achieve temperature set point. Choose either an intermittent or constant strategy, but be consistent. Both have their applications. I prefer in the southern climates to do intermittent and non-stack ventilation time. An example of that would be many controls that exist on the market today. If it is too hot based upon temperature and humidity lockout, it will say, do not ventilate for this hour, stack it on the end of the 24-hour cycle. Often that happens when the temperature drops during the middle of the night, but the dew point's at the highest. So they've missed 8 hours of ventilation time during the day, and that damper or ventilator is pretty much just going to run for the remainder of that missed call at the dew point when it's highest, creating humidity issues. We can control the settings through our controls because we've built in firmware to keep the temperature and humidity with lockouts in an optimal position without having to stack miss ventilation time, because ASHRAE allows us to go to 25% of the total prescribed time per hour, as well as being able to not have to stack it. So we've automatically calculated that into our control. So it reduces installer error. It reduces the amount of install time that has to happen at setup. Mentioned those callbacks before. That's one of the reasons why we can reduce them entirely. Ventilation should never come at the sacrifice of comfort. If it does, something is wrong. Ventilation happens during a heating or cooling call, because then we're not running a subset or a secondary call outside of what is already happening in the home. So any control in the market that you're looking for, whether it's field controls or not, you want to know that that control is going to actively seek to see a heating or cooling call prior to running its own ventilation cycle. Especially in southern climates where you're getting multiple calls an hour, we can divide those calls to mix appropriately with a heating or cooling call to minimize the impact of only bringing in outside air. Air should be appropriately mixed and distributed evenly throughout the residence at that point in time. Forcing ventilation without a control is never recommended. Typically the most, like you mentioned, the passive scenario before, or if you just hardwire a damper to the air handler to open and energize whenever the fan turns on in the system, overventilates the house and creates a multitude of problems. So how are we ventilating? We want to understand the ventilation requirements, select the simplest design that can achieve both air quality and energy objectives. We want to build a tight envelope because a tight envelope is preferred. Pay attention to installation quality in our checkups with our GCs and check to make sure ventilation works. Finally, educating the end users. Simplicity is best when we focus on IAQ and not technologies. Choose appropriate technologies to fit our goals. Design our setups for durability and do basic duct design, but do it well. Include performance specifications for leakage and flow. One thing I'll notice here, I'll stop, about more energy efficient builds that are now required not only to do a blower door test, but to do a duct blast test as well. The advantage of our air cleaner cabinets is we have a direct fit for every manufacturer. Some of the competitive air cleaners that are out on the market have more of a standard dimensional fit where there is leakage. And so we have seen homes fail based upon competitive products because they do not seal correctly to the air handler. When we're working with the community, we'll identify the manufacturer that you're working with, whether it be Trane, Carrier, Lennox, or any of the manufacturers, to create an exact fit air cleaner for the model that you're working with to minimize any possibility for leakage. One scenario from the field that I will just bring to the attention as multifamily is also progressing to adopting ventilation code is often tenant and occupant behavior matters quite a bit. And as a manufacturer, we support our contractors and GCs in these projects if we ever need to mediate with a management company. And this is a letter that we crafted for the HVAC installer to present to the facility. And it's really simple. There's essentials here. Keep the thermostat set to auto. Running the fan on increases humid conditions. Do not attempt to adjust ventilation control. It's preset and engineered to design to the building code. Avoid opening windows when humid and hot conditions are present. You'd be surprised how many complaints we get just because humidity gets trapped in when the doors and windows are open. When cooking or showering, use the exhaust fan for extra humidity and then shut it off when you're done. If you run any type of fan, it's going to pull air in these types of envelopes. And that contributes to not optimal air, especially when you're providing overventilation. The cooling equipment performs best when set to 70 to 75 degrees. The temperature is optimal for reducing humidity. In the case where we found out and did our analysis, the temperature was set to 80 degrees, which meant no cooling was happening, and thus we were not able to reduce any of the load for moisture. Getting into our products, one of the best controls on the market because of the full functionality is the Field Controls fresh air ventilation control. It allows you to control up to 4 appliances throughout the home, and it has exhaust monitoring. So it knows if you have a bath fan tied, a dryer vent, kitchen ventilation makeup air, or a ventilator, ERV, dehumidifier, whatever air is coming into the house, it's stacking for credit, and it knows whatever air is going and exiting the home at that point in time. So theoretically, if you wanted to create a balanced home environment, you could tie in 3 bathroom fans to this control, pair it with a power ventilator, and you have a balanced home. When we think of balanced ventilation, we typically think of ERV, but it's possible to achieve it in other manners as well. It's easily customizable. It comes with a factory setting of a 2,000 square foot home, but can be adjusted with a screw terminal. And one of the reasons why we chose to go analog with this control rather than digital, speed of install. as well as the ability, most homeowners aren't going to come in with a screwdriver and change your CFM setting or change the minutes per hour in which one of those controls is going to monitor. It again monitors up to 4 exhaust appliances for the whole home ventilation setup, and then it does include temperature and humidity lockouts. We consider this the ecosystem of ventilation. Regardless of what you're trying to accomplish in single family, this control can mount easily near the air handler or in the duct setup and provide additional functionality on top of that. Speaking to more of a mixed utility setup, I'm actually going to skip ahead here. What we see in 90% of multifamily design is a utility closet that brings in outside air through a ventilator or through a mechanical damper, mixes into the air handler, and then disperses from there. Primarily, when you take a control and mount it in the utility closet, remember the example I used prior. If you're using a ventilating thermostat, often it's too late for that thermostat to recognize what's happening in the environment. So we've seen multiple properties with issues inside of the utility closet that create damp environments, mold, mildew, as well as just a funky smell that disperses throughout the complex. With this control here, it provides us the option to simply set the minutes per hour, and the ASHRAE 62.2 calculations are built in automatically to keep the closet between 40 to 60% relative humidity. It does that by sensing 8 key factors at startup to balance temperature and humidity regardless of climate zone. So recall, one of the variables that we're taking away is, what climate zone are we in? It's going to be standard throughout all climate zones. The built-in temperature and humidity sensor requires no need to additional wire. So often we see a control with a little temp sensor drilled through a duct or placed outside at a condenser. There's no need for that type of setup because it's already built into the control. So again, speed of install, ease of use, reducing callbacks, all of these are factored into this control. And it has a quick start test feature. So if you see the switch on the bottom, that's an on-off switch. So when you turn it off and you turn it on, it'll immediately boost up into test mode. In addition, if you have this control and you don't want to have ventilation, all you have to do is turn it off. It's again, analog, so that we feel homeowners and tenants are very comfortable with digital and buttons. So they're much more likely to press buttons and get lost in a decision tree and change something inadvertently. At this point in time, all they would change, if they were able to, because this has a lock plate cover on it, is to turn up or down the minutes per hour or turn ventilation on or off. So the fast click lock cover deters the tenant from actually pulling a screwdriver out and popping it open. It does seek to ventilate with a heating or cooling coil to optimal comfort and efficiencies. One dial to adjust intermittent ventilation. And the point here is, when you do have it paired with a ventilator, our fresh air power ventilator has the ability to dial in your CFM, dial in your time on your control, and you're done. It is the fastest setup on the market, which will hopefully reflect in those labor bills. Best purchasing practices. You can find our equipment through a national distribution network of over 6,000 locations nationwide. We also can ship direct to job sites or a contractor warehouse from field controls through a distribution partner. This will help us to eliminate long lead times, reduce shipping costs, provide accurate production forecasting. We can reserve stock for specific communities so that it's staged effectively and we do not potentially short order or miss providing stock when it's required. We have an easy quote guarantee to our builders and to our contractors, which will enable the pricing to be locked in for 1 year, because we know when we do get a bid or a quote, it typically is about a 9-month cycle before we see that equipment land. So often, once that bid or scope of work is sent out, there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, a lot of back and forth between the engineers. We try to minimize that to be as easy to deal with as possible. So we have an easy quote guarantee, and we can provide that quote typically within 10 to 15 minutes through a quoting software. We also have an emergency quick ship program per each job or community in an emergency. We get that there's theft, we get that there's breakage. We will provide up to $800 in free product and ship it 2-day air for a community of over 100 units. And that will go directly through our customer service team. This will reduce the amount of miscounts, lost items, etc. We understand a lot of that is out of our control, so our goal is to help the critical deadlines and avoid potential complaints. We've had several stories, I can't say while I've been at Field Controls, but where ventilation equipment or energy rater has gone in and passed or failed a specific home, and the builder has been calling the HVAC company trying to get someone out there to adjust it because they're paying $1,000 a day to keep someone in a hotel room or because they cannot move in. You know, we try to avoid any type of circumstance like this as much as possible. So keys for our success, we hope you stop by at our show. We'd love to see an engineering contact for us to review your building plans. We can load those into our Dropbox file and our team can take a look at the designs. We'd prefer to have a county and address of the job site so we know, hey, if you don't have to ventilate, we'll let you know. We'd love to see the scope of work, project timeline, and expectations for deliverables. We can definitely help. An introduction to your installing HVAC contractor, as well as your general contractor on site. So any issues we can be involved with and rectify, as well as an awareness of any related job site issues for our engagement. With that, we'll take Q&A.
Thank you, Tony. That was great. We do have a few questions if you're ready to dive on in.
By all means, yes.
Great. So you were talking about education. Our first question is, how do you plan on educating the trades? Via webinars, on-site trainings, educating me and passing it on to the contractors? Do you have a plan for that?
Absolutely. So Field Controls has a regional sales staff of 8 folks spread throughout the country who are engaged not only with our rep agencies, but our distributors as well. We do train the trainer. So in terms of being able to train our territory managers that are out in front of the HVAC technicians, they are prepared to provide them a much more detailed technical training. So that's one step. Our goal is to be able to get in front of the contractor, installing the product, providing them shortcut tools like wiring diagrams, as well as being able to provide some assistance online. Should they need a webinar in the can, we can specify that to the specific company. We can work with the general managers of those branches to provide any materials or even a custom learning program, whether it's direct from our regional sales managers or through the Train the Trainer program we have with our distribution partners. And as we progress, we're looking into a learning management system that will certify our contractors as clean air certified partners and be able to install our equipment, as well as place them throughout a job network once they are certified with our products to find eligible work. So we're progressing on a path of training that I don't believe many IAQ companies or manufacturers are thinking about, whether it be a train the trainer or reaching out to our builder partners or even their sales agents in the model home to provide them literature or an overall webinar that can standardize a message. We've done that with DR Horton through their multifamily division, with one presentation that was spread throughout their entire footprint. So what we find again is standardization in that training is helpful. Certification of those processes is helpful, as well as we go so far as to work with the engineers on their plans to do lunch and learns, so that it starts at the genesis of the design. And that's part of why we've been able to reduce callbacks and we've been able to provide direct specifications towards each custom build.
Great. So pretty much in that same vein, I know that you showed the example of the multifamily leave behind, but how do you suggest that we educate our homeowners?
That is a great question, and I can't say that I have it figured out because every homeowner is different. What we could provide a community would be in a general move-in packet, either a link to a video where we could walk through a model home and explain the equipment, or potentially provide a standard front and back page of what we would call a quick startup guide for homeowner awareness, as well as our customer support phone number. To any of our builders out there, we do have a dedicated customer support team for complex technical questions so that you could call in the field. But primarily the homeowner is a fickle one, and everyone's different. So, mediating, our role as the manufacturer is to always support the builder and always support the contractor, to never throw those guys under the bus, because I've been in front of homeowners that truly there's no pleasing. There's nothing that you can do just because the expectations are so far out of line with whatever mechanical equipment you're putting in there. So our role is dual there. We protect the assets of the builders and of the contractors who have done the work. We truthfully have an honest assessment of what's happening in a trouble scenario, but we avoid that at all costs with providing upfront materials. And if you have any suggestions, I would love a follow-up comment for anything we can do on our end, because we're out there actively engaged in the field.
It always is hard dealing with, different people. So is it possible to implement this in a remodel, or is it only for new builds?
Absolutely possible to implement it in a remodel. And for example, I'm in Orlando, Florida, so the most humid climate in the United States. And we get a lot of retrofits, whether it's hurricane windows and doors, or one of the issues I commonly see is someone who's concerned about energy calling a spray foam installation company, and they're spray foaming the attics and sealing up the envelope when that home wasn't necessarily designed, mechanically speaking, to have that style of tightness. So you're going to want to be cautious to work with the right people when you're in any type of remodel. I believe in some instances the code states that at 40%, so say you had a 4,000 square foot home, at a 40% change in square footage, you're required to put in ventilation. So there is some code to acknowledge there as well. But yes, absolutely, you can put in any of these IAQ products into a remodel, and in fact, we recommend it.
Okay. As you mentioned earlier in your presentation, COVID has impacted the awareness for the need of healthy air in your home. Have you found this as a good selling point?
Unfortunately, yes. And it not only the homes, but we do some commercial work as well with school districts. So it's a very polarizing topic, and I would prefer that we sell on value and that we sell on the ability to provide, additional benefits to the homeowner. Like, for example, just a simple air cleaner can protect their second largest investment other than their vehicle, being their air handler. So yes, I mean, I do not prefer or to train anyone to go in and to use COVID as a scare tactic. We're very conscious not to do that. We prefer to, drive the value for the homeowner on a clean environment, on less allergens. And in fact, we've done a lot of market research where if I was able to pull it up currently, virus or, the top 6 reasons to put in an air cleaner, one is not virus related. So there's more funds available, corporately speaking, to mitigate since COVID. So the whole entire air quality industry has given it a boost. But I can tell you one of the complexities for our supply chain is a lot of distributors bought a lot of junk or gimmicks during the pandemic, and they're sitting on them as stock right now. So what we've been going in there as a value proposition is to consolidate your IAQ line under field controls, because not only do we have the ventilation and air cleaning side, UV, etc., we have other products alongside of what our competitors have that's more all encompassing, whether it be dehumidifiers, ERV, HRV, et cetera, commercial products, and that would help them, carry in, one brand, if you will, to consolidate those lines and hopefully, move more product. COVID was an easy button, not only for our installers, but for sales. And that easy button's gone. There's fatigue based upon, us talking about COVID. So I definitely think the messaging from our company has changed to be much more positive and upbeat.
Absolutely. What is the best way for builders in Texas to see, test, and become believers in the Field Controls product?
Awesome. I love that question. So we do have a demo program. I would love for you to reach out to Charles, and as soon as you identify what it is that you would like to install, either in your own personal home, or in a model home, or provide some level of testing. We have third-party testing on our products. We can provide you any details as far as the performance. But please do reach out to Charles or stop by our booth, because we can sign you up for our demo equipment program. And we're pretty flexible and love providing demo equipment to not only our trades, installers, but builders, so that they can kick it around in their own homes. Because when you're able to experience it for yourself, and that it does make a difference, you can sell it much easier.
So will you be having examples of your product at your booth at Sunbelt?
Yes.
Great. So I build in multiple climates or locations in Texas. Do you guys work on a personal level or a 1-by-1 to find out what would be the best product for my multiple locations for my home?
100%. That would start preferably in the planning process. If we could see the mechanical plans and review those, either via web call or on site, we could determine, what the best strategy would be, not only for product selection, but for optimization for the climate zones.
Great. Well, I believe that's all the questions that we have. I just wanted to thank Field Controls and Tony and Charles for this great presentation. And as a reminder, please don't forget to register for the Sunbelt Builders Show at www.sunbeltbuildershow.com. And please say hi to Field Controls in booth number 928 on the trade show floor. And we can't wait to see you all in Fort Worth. Is there anything else you'd like to say, Tony?
No, I just appreciate the opportunity. And regardless of whether or not it's Field Controls, there are a lot of good companies out there that provide quality products to the marketplace. I just hope that we're able, as an industry as a whole, to change the perception of ventilation so that we can start doing it right, and it's adopted in a manner where we know it can be successful.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Field Controls, and thank you all. And as a reminder, this webinar will be recorded and it will be on our Texas Builders YouTube channel. And just thank you all for attending and have a wonderful day.